When we were young, I chased her for 5 years to no avail. 5 years later, I saw her in a KTV among a crowd of girls in short skirts. I had been drinking, so I shamelessly grabbed her hand and said, "Bai Shaxu, will you kiss me?" She obediently complied. But as she held me and kissed me, her eyes held a dark emotion I couldn't understand. That day was my buddy's birthday. Our group had a lot to drink, and we all agreed to hire a few girls to drink with us. That was when I saw her among them, the goddess I had chased for 5 years without success. We hadn't seen each other for 2 years. But she hadn't changed at all. Her face was still striking, and her eyes were still crystal clear. She still loved wearing white dresses. With that aloof gaze, standing in the crowd, she seemed completely detached from the mundane world. There were 5 of us, guys. Including myself. 3 of us set our sights on Bai Shaxu at the exact same time. But I stepped in and stopped them. "Brothers, leave this one to me." Fueled by alcohol, they slurred their protests. But I only said one sentence, and they all instantly quieted down. "She's Bai Shaxu." They froze in unison and exchanged glances. I had told them more than once the story of me and Bai Shaxu, and so I got my wish and led Bai Shaxu back to the sofa. My brothers were very loyal. By unspoken agreement, they left the darkest, quietest corner entirely to us. Sitting beside her, I felt like I couldn't breathe, my chest tight. I sat stiffly and nervously. Even though I was the paying client, I didn't dare utter a single word. A long time passed before I softly asked, "Have you been doing okay these past 2 years?" She replied softly. Her voice cut through the loud music right into my ears. A simple was her entire answer. What followed was a long, suffocating silence, until my friends, seeing how cowardly I was being, ordered a few more rounds of drinks. Bai Shaxu didn't speak. She just quietly drank with me. After a few bottles, the alcohol began to numb my nerves. I chugged an entire bottle of beer, slammed the empty bottle down hard on the coffee table, and turned to look at Bai Shaxu. She was holding her glass, her fingers slender and pale. Even her hands were prettier than most people's. I stared at her quietly for a long moment. Tipsy, I took out my wallet and forcefully stuffed a stack of cash into her hand. Then, looking at the person I had treated as a goddess for years, I slurred, "Bai Shaxu, will you kiss me?" Bai Shaxu looked at me for a long time, and suddenly smiled. Having chased her for years, I rarely saw her smile. When she smiled, her eyes crinkled slightly, like scattered starlight shining within them. The next second, she chuckled and glanced at the money. "I'll have to kiss you a few more times, or I might feel guilty taking all this money." I barely snapped out of the trance her smile put me in, and through the alcohol haze, I frowned. "Don't just say it, you should." But before I could finish, Bai Shaxu actually leaned in and kissed me. My mind went completely blank. The soft warmth on my lip was something I hadn't dared to imagine, even in my wildest dreams. Bai Shaxu actually kissed me. My mind was completely blank. I wanted to pull her in by the shoulders, but my hands hovered in the air, unable to bring myself to touch her. After a long moment, this somewhat clumsy kiss finally ended. The girl I had revered as a goddess was now looking at me quietly, her eyes perfectly calm. In her hand, she was still holding the wad of cash I had stuffed into it. She seemed to have suddenly fallen from the heavens, tainted by the mortal world. Of course, I wouldn't look down on her for this. On the contrary, my hands, hidden in my sleeves, were trembling slightly. If she would really stay by my side for money, then that would be wonderful. Maybe I just had good luck. After I opened a coffee shop, I didn't lose everything, like my family predicted. Instead, it inexplicably became an internet-famous spot, with an endless stream of customers coming to visit every day. So I had money. But Bai Shaxu was someone you couldn't just buy. Staring at her for a long time, I turned, grabbed a bottle of alcohol, and chugged more than half of it in one breath. Slamming it down on the table, I took a deep breath, turned to her and said, "Bai Shaxu." She responded. Her voice was very soft. It fell into my ears, like a feather, warm and ticklish. I licked my lips, gathering my courage to ask, "Will you come home with me?" Bai Xiaoxiu was clearly stunned. She lowered her eyes, not looking at me. Those eyes were deep and beautiful, but whatever emotions were brewing in them, in my drunken state, I couldn't understand it all. However, my alcohol-numbed brain gradually began to catch up. I hastily corrected myself to explain. I mean, are you in some kind of trouble right now? I can help you. Really? Bai Xiaoxiu looked at me quietly for a long time. A really long time. And, just as I was about to lose my nerve, Bai Xiaoxiu softly spoke. I need a lot of money. That's fine. I desperately grabbed her hand, repeatedly insisting. I can help you. Really, the sorrow of unrequited love all those years was ignited by the alcohol in this single moment. I gripped her hand tightly, staring at her without blinking. Bai Xiaoxiu, please don't go drink with other men, okay? I couldn't imagine Bai Xiaoxiu, who always loved wearing white dresses, sitting beside other men for money, or even worse, being in their beds. I don't know if she was affected by my sudden surge of emotion, but the initially indifferent Bai Xiaoxiu also gradually grew solemn. She looked at me quietly, her gaze completely unreadable, just as I frantically tried to add her WeChat to transfer money. Bai Xiaoxiu pressed down on my hand. Her palm was warm. In just those few seconds of contact, the warmth slowly spread all over my body. No need to transfer it yet. Saying this, she glanced at the money I had just shoved into her hand, and said lightly, let's settle it daily. This money is exactly enough for one day. I was stunned for a moment. Bai Xiaoxiu had just said she was expensive, but I hadn't expected her to be this expensive. I had stuffed at least 10,000 yuan into her hand, yet it was only enough to keep her for a single day. But I gritted my teeth and agreed anyway. That day, I brought Bai Xiaoxiu home. I had been drinking, but she hadn't. I was dizzy from drunkenness, but my courage only grew, fueled by liquid courage. I stripped her of her clothes in the bedroom. Actually, Bai Xiaoxiu's first reaction was to refuse, but I cupped her face in my hands and stared at her very seriously, struggling to focus my gaze on her face. Bai Xiaoxiu, I slurred to her, I paid for this. Are you ready to accept me? Bai Xiaoxiu froze for 2 seconds, then smiled and said, and then she truly didn't resist anymore. But I was far too drunk. Just as I was about to undress, my chest suddenly felt tight, and I threw up right there by the bed. After that, I didn't remember much. Anyway, when I woke up the next day, Bai Xiaoxiu was in my arms. She was wearing my dress shirt, lying right there in my embrace. I instantly sobered up, full of regret. I whispered to ask her what happened last night. Bai Xiaoxiu smiled. She slightly raised an eyebrow, her eyes unimaginably beautiful. Guess. I pulled back the covers and took a look. Crap. I really drank too much last night. I stared at the red mark on the bedsheets in silence for a long time. I pressed my lips together and softly said, I'll take responsibility for you. Saying this, I hurriedly fished out my phone, wanting to transfer her money on the spot. But my phone hadn't been charged last night, and was dead. Holding the dead phone, I smiled awkwardly. I'll pay you today's fee in a little while. Bai Xiaoxiu paused for a second, then lowered her eyes and murmured an M. After that, we silently got out of bed and got dressed. Neither of us said a word. But while Bai Xiaoxiu was getting up to dress, I snuck a peek at her. Such a beautiful girl. Yet I had absolutely no memory of last night. I had completely blacked out. What a shame. Right as Bai Xiaoxiu turned around, I hurriedly withdrew my gaze, frantically looking away. She took off the shirt and wrapped herself in a bathrobe. Looking back at me, she frowned slightly. My dress isn't dry. I glanced at the dress hanging on the balcony. You did laundry last night? Bai Xiaoxiu said in a low voice. You threw up all over me. My face turned pale as I tried to recall. It seemed I really was the one who threw up. We stood face to face in silence for a moment. Suddenly, I remembered. I think I have one of my sister's dresses here. It's new. I quickly dug it out of the closet and handed it to Bai Xiaoxiu. She didn't take it immediately, but lowered her eyes to look at it for a second. Bai Xiaoxiu looked up at me. You keep women's dresses in your house. Her voice was very light, without any interrogating tone to it. It seemed like she was just casually commenting. And then she took the dress. driven by some unknown urge. I hurriedly explained, "It's my sister's. She bought it on her way here, last time, and forgot to take it when she left." Bai Xiaoxiu didn't really react. She simply took the dress and went to the bathroom. I had just finished changing when Bai Xiaoxiu's voice called out from the bathroom, "Do you have a new toothbrush?" "Yes," I quickly replied, and hurried in to find a toothbrush for her. I carefully picked up my own toothbrush and stood next to her as we brushed our teeth together. In the mirror, I was wearing a white button-down shirt, which perfectly matched Bai Xiaoxiu's white dress. We stood side by side, and she only reached up to my chin. But after we finished brushing, Bai Xiaoxiu's toothpaste foam was full of blood. It scared me to death. "Bai Xiaoxiu, are you?" But Bai Xiaoxiu just casually rinsed her mouth, washing away the foam at the corners of her lips, looking completely calm. "I'm fine. My gums have just been a little inflamed lately." I could only nod. But, in my heart, I started to wonder. Bai Xiaoxiu working at a KTV as a hostess. Could it be like in the TV shows, where she has some terminal illness? But Bai Xiaoxiu looked so indifferent. It didn't seem like it at all. After washing up, we sat side by side on the edge of the bed. There was another bout of silence. She turned to look at me and whispered, asking, "Can I still go to work?" "Work?" I was stunned for a moment, and greedily asked, "You mean at the KTV?" Seeing that I couldn't bear to say it, Bai Xiaoxiu nodded, but I interrupted her. "No." I refused without a second thought. I hurriedly unplugged my charging phone, turned it on, quickly added Bai Xiaoxiu as a contact, and transferred her 10 yuan. "I've sent it to you. Please don't go accompany other men anymore." After a thought, I softened my tone and added, "Okay." Bai Xiaoxiu looked at me for a long time, then lowered her eyes. "Okay." While eating breakfast, I couldn't help but ask her softly, "Bai Xiaoxiu, why don't you find a different job? Someone as proud as her. How could she resign herself to a job selling smiles for money?" After I said that, Bai Xiaoxiu's hand holding the spoon paused. Finally, she said calmly, "I really need money." As for exactly why, she didn't say, and I didn't dare to ask further. After breakfast, I had to go to the coffee shop, but Bai Xiaoxiu followed me closely, step for step. When I asked her about it, she said with a calm expression that since I paid to keep her time belonged entirely to me. I, of course, happily agreed. Inside the coffee shop, Bai Xiaoxiu, wearing a clean white dress, stood behind the counter with me, and immediately caught the eyes of a crowd of customers. She had a very pure look about her, with a pair of dark, pristine eyes. She didn't even need to do anything. Just standing there quietly was enough to draw everyone's attention. Some people are simply born to shine. Ever since I met Bai Xiaoxiu in my youth, I could never be amazed by anyone else again. During my free time at work, I would always rest my chin on my hand and sneak glances at her. It felt as if everything had returned to how it used to be. Speaking of which, Bai Xiaoxiu and I had known each other for many years. We were high school classmates, and later we both got into the same university in this city. However, in the second half of our sophomore year, Bai Xiaoxiu dropped out. From then on, we never heard any news about her again. None of us did. Back when we were in school, Bai Xiaoxiu was the most conspicuous person in the crowd. But people like her are always subjected to jealousy. In high school, there were many rumors and gossip about her, and they were very ugly. Her parents had died in an accident when she was in middle school, and in our junior year of high school, a rumor suddenly spread across the whole school. Everyone was saying that Bai Xiaoxiu was being kept by an older man with special tastes. An older man, over a dozen years, her senior. All sorts of rumors were flying around. But Bai Xiaoxiu never explained herself, so people gradually assumed she was silently admitting it. In truth, many boys liked Bai Xiaoxiu, but back then, because of the rumors, everyone kept their distance from her. I was the only one who, being stubborn and persistent, braved all the gossip and pursued her for 5 years. From my freshman year of high school to the end of my sophomore year of college, I only remember that when I confessed to her in public, the first thing she said to me was, "Those rumors, aren't you afraid of them?" So much time has passed that I can no longer remember many of the details, but even today, I still remember how I looked at her with earnest certainty back then. Afraid of what? When I like someone, I'm never afraid. Sk, sk. I was so brave and fearless back then, not like now where I have to use alcohol as an excuse just to offer to take care of her. Business was exceptionally good today. Of course, the majority of the customers were male. Even though business was good, I was a little unhappy. I always felt like my precious treasure was being ogled by other guys. So I closed up shop early today and took Bai Xiaoxiu back home. After all, there are some things more important than running a business, right? Bai Xiaoxiu obediently came home with me, but then I chickened out again. She cooperatively followed me into the bedroom. But as she sat down on the edge of the bed and looked at me quietly, those crystal-clear eyes filled me with guilt. It felt like all my dirty thoughts were defiling her. I simply couldn't bring myself to do it. After thinking it over, I decided to go buy some more alcohol. Bai Xiaoxiu was very obedient. She brought the alcohol back and put it on the bedroom rug, then turned and went into the kitchen. I was stunned. "What are you doing?" "Cooking." She put on an apron, carrying the groceries she had bought while we were buying alcohol downstairs, and entered the kitchen. "Drinking on an empty stomach is bad for your digestion." As she spoke, she added another reminder. "Remember to eat your meals on time from now on." Hearing those words softened my heart. I quickly followed her into the kitchen, leaned in close, and whispered, "So, does this mean you care about me?" Bai Xiaoxiu smiled, her features softening with that smile. "You can think of it that way." I laughed along with her. Then I would just take it as her caring about me. Bai Xiaoxiu was a great cook. I sat on the sofa watching TV, only hearing a clatter of pots and pans from the kitchen. Before long, she brought the food out. 2 dishes and 1 soup. Braised eggplant, garlic romaine lettuce, and tomato egg soup. Very ordinary home-cooked meals. Yet I couldn't stop eating. Wow, my goddess was truly omnipotent. Not only was she beautiful and a great student back in school, but she even cooked so deliciously. Full and satisfied, I finally remembered the alcohol in the bedroom that I hadn't touched. I hesitated for a long while before giving up. Forget it. If I drank now, I'd throw up from being too full after dinner. Bai Xiaoxiu wouldn't let me into the kitchen and went to wash the dishes by herself. Then she curled up on the sofa with me to binge watch a show. But how could I focus on a TV show? Right next to me was the girl I had loved for so many years. I could hear her breathing, feel her body heat, and with just a glance up, I could see her soft side profile. Any of these things made it impossible for me to stay calm. As we were watching, suddenly, a passionate kissing scene appeared on the screen. I instantly lost all my composure. Watching the male and female leads making out so passionately, I suddenly got in the mood. I turned to her and tested the waters. "Kiss me." Bai Xiaoxiu was stunned for a moment. Then she smiled. She said, "Okay." And then her kiss fell softly upon me. Bai Xiaoxiu kissed me very gently. Her lips pressed lightly against mine, tenderly lingering, and the kiss gradually deepened. With her eyes closed, she reached out and quietly grabbed my collar. Bai Xiaoxiu held my hand, but eventually, she quietly let go. I was a little nervous, thinking that tonight everything would naturally fall into place. But Bai Xiaoxiu casually rejected me. On the bed, fully clothed, Bai Xiaoxiu hugged me. "Go to sleep," she whispered in my ear, her voice slightly hoarse. I didn't know what that flash of heartache in her eyes was for, nor did I know if her heart had truly ever fluttered for me. But since she refused me, of course I wasn't going to force her. Honestly, just being able to hold her in my arms like this, to lean over and gently kiss her lips, was already something I wouldn't have dared to dream of in the past. I gently wrapped my arms around her waist. "Good night, Bai Xiaoxiu." It felt like something was slowly filling up my once empty heart. The windows at home were bright and clean. The residual scent of food lingered in the air. And with Bai Xiaoxiu in my arms, listening to her steady breathing, this kind of life. Please give me another few hundred years of it. I thought Bai Xiaoxiu wouldn't respond to me. But a few seconds later, her voice sounded by my ear. "Good night, Jiang Suyan." Hearing my name spoken from her lips somehow made my heart skip a beat with incredible ease. I remember when I first met Bai Xiaoxiu in my freshman year of high school. She had asked for my name, and then smiled softly It sounds nice. It was probably that very smile upon our first meeting that made me fall for her completely. I was lost in thought when I heard Bai Xiaoxiu softly ask, "What are you thinking about?" I looked up and happened to meet her gaze. She was smiling gently, but the depths of her pure black eyes were clouded with too many emotions I couldn't read. I looked at her and smiled. I was thinking that saying is true. When you're young, you really shouldn't meet someone too incredible. Otherwise, the rest of your life will never be at peace. Bai Xiaoxiu didn't speak. Only after a moment of silence, she slightly tightened her grip on my arm. Just like that, Bai Xiaoxiu and I began our ambiguous cohabitation. My home was right here in the city, and since my parents were always busy with work, they never came to my place. I never brought Bai Xiaoxiu to my friends for a formal introduction. For one, I wasn't actually her boyfriend, so I had no real title to introduce her with. And for another, I was actually being a bit selfish. Bai Xiaoxiu was too beautiful to me. I always had this urge to hide her away, unwilling to let anyone else see her. So, keeping it a secret from everyone, I paid the high price of 10 a day to keep Bai Xiaoxiu. I say, keep, but, in reality, we were no different from an ordinary couple, except I was soon going to be unable to afford her. At 10 a day, the little savings I had on hand could last for a dozen days at most. Coincidentally enough, or perhaps it was fated by some unseen force, on the 10th night of our arrangement, she suddenly received a phone call. It was around 2:10 a.m. when Bai Xiaoxiu's phone suddenly rang. Her phone was never on silent, 24 hours a day, as if she was afraid of missing something. When the phone rang, she, usually so calm, almost violently sat bolt upright and snatched the phone from beside her pillow. A voice spoke from the other end of the line, but I could only clearly make out the last sentence. "The situation is very bad. Come quickly." After hanging up, Bai Xiaoxiu didn't say a single word to me. She just quickly got out of bed and dressed. I had never seen such a grave expression on her face. I couldn't help but ask her what was wrong, but she wouldn't speak. I didn't even know if she had even heard me asking. Seeing her like this, I couldn't just let it go. So I started putting on my clothes too. But Bai Xiaoxiu dressed incredibly fast. As soon as she was dressed, she headed straight out the bedroom door. "Bai Xiaoxiu," I called out anxiously, hurriedly grabbing my jacket and chasing after her. At the door, Bai Xiaoxiu was just about to leave, but stopped and turned to look at me. In my rush, I had one foot in a slipper and the other foot bare on the floor. Bai Xiaoxiu said in a low voice, "I have an emergency. You go back to sleep. Don't wait up for me tonight." I quickly caught up to her. "I'm worried about you. I'm going with you." Bai Xiaoxiu looked at me for a moment, her voice a bit hoarse. "Put your shoes on properly. It's cold at night." I quickly put on my shoes and followed behind Bai Xiaoxiu. As we left, we hailed a taxi because Bai Xiaoxiu kept urging him to hurry. The driver drove quite fast. There were few cars in the early morning, so we arrived very quickly. The destination was a hospital, our city's best oncology hospital. I seemed to guess something then, but Bai Xiaoxiu was an orphan. I didn't know who else could make her care this much, even going as far as working as a hostess to earn medical fees. Getting out of the taxi, Bai Xiaoxiu practically sprinted all the way into the hospital. I hurriedly jogged after her. In front of the emergency room, Bai Xiaoxiu stared at the lit sign above the door, her hands tightly clenched. For some reason, her gaze into the room seemed full of desperate hope. I stood behind her, watching her. I didn't know what she had truly been through, nor did I know what kind of experiences had slowly molded her into the Bai Xiaoxiu she was today. During this time, we didn't say a single word. Actually, I wanted to ask her who was inside, but after hesitating time and again, I ultimately didn't make a sound to disturb her. I don't know how much time passed, but the operating room light turned off, and a doctor walked out. Bai Xiaoxiu rushed over almost instantly. "Boo, T." The doctor still gave her the answer she least wanted to hear. "I'm sorry, we've done our best. The patient still has a little bit of consciousness, Lefty. If you have anything to say, please say it quickly." Bai Xiaoxiu stood there, utterly frozen, still only leaving me with her back. She clearly hadn't moved. Yet, her straight spine seemed to instantly bend. Soon, medical staff wheeled someone out and into a hospital room. It was a middle-aged man. Bai Shaoxiu swiftly followed. Inside, as they passed by me, I pursed my lips and carefully observed the man lying on the gurney. I had seen this person before. Back then, when rumors were flying around school, everyone said Bai Shaoxiu was being kept by a wealthy man who was over a dozen years older than her. The rumors were told with such conviction and vivid detail, and I had seen the circulated photos back then. Because it concerned Bai Shaoxiu, I remembered it exceptionally clearly, even though the man lying on the gurney just now was tormented by illness and deathly pale. I still recognized him at a glance. It was him. In the rumors, Bai Shaoxiu's older lover was him. I couldn't describe at that moment what kind of feeling arose in my heart. It felt like I had uncovered a truth, but it was a truth I found somewhat hard to accept. So everything Bai Shaoxiu had done, even throwing away her dignity to work as a hostess, was all for this middle-aged man who was a dozen years older and related to her by no blood whatsoever. I couldn't help but overthink it. So, the 10 yuan a day I paid to keep her horror was also used to treat his illness, wasn't it? At that moment my heart felt incredibly sour and bitter, an indescribable feeling. At the door of the hospital room, because of her panic, Bai Shaoxiu hadn't closed the door. I stood just a few steps away from the doorway, able to see what was happening inside. Bai Shaoxiu was kneeling by the bed, tightly holding his hand. The Bai Shaoxiu, who, even if the sky fell, would always keep her spine straight, was now curled up and trembling slightly. I couldn't see Bai Shaoxiu's expression, but I could see the man's face. He looked at Bai Shaoxiu, murmuring something softly. Bai Shaoxiu gripped his hand tightly. Her shoulders completely slumped. Suddenly, he slowly turned his head and looked at me. I froze, not knowing how to react. I just stared at him foolishly, until he smiled at me and turned his head back. Bai Shaoxiu also followed his movement and glanced at me. Her eyes were incredibly bloodshot. That middle-aged man really seemed to have reached the end of his line. He forced out a few sentences to Bai Shaoxiu, but grew weaker and weaker, until Bai Shaoxiu gently leaned over and hugged him. When she sat back up, the man seemed to have stopped moving. Bai Shaoxiu knelt before the bed for a long time. Then she stood up, straightened the man's clothes and the bedsheets, and calmly walked out the door to call the nurse. From beginning to end, she didn't say a single word to me. I started to feel a bit scared. The person she cared about had passed away, so she no longer needed to debase herself for medical bills. Would she leave me too? I didn't dare to think about it. I didn't know if it was out of extreme grief. But after the man passed, Bai Shaoxiu appeared remarkably calm instead. So calm that it was somewhat frightening. I almost wished she would squat there and cry in pain, as that was the normal reaction for someone who was heartbroken. But Bai Shaoxiu didn't. She calmly called the nurse, calmly watched the hospital staff, pushed the man into the hospital morgue, and calmly went back home to sleep with me. By the time we got home, the sky was already growing light. We lay on the bed, each of us silent. I couldn't hold it back, and turned my head to ask her softly, "So, were you two really in the kind of relationship the rumors said?" I really only asked because I couldn't hold it in anymore. The look that person gave me when he turned his head kept lingering in my heart. I couldn't put it into words, nor could I forget that look in his eyes. However, I didn't expect Bai Shaoxi's reaction to be so intense. She abruptly sat up, looked down at me and said, "Jiang Suyan, I don't want to hear that kind of talk ever again." I had never seen Bai Shaoxi with such a cold expression. For a moment, I couldn't even process it. After a long while, Bai Shaoxi seemed to calm down. She nestled into my arms, and her voice softened considerably. "Jiang Suya, other people can doubt me. They can throw dirt on me, but you have to believe me." I nodded in a daze. But she only asked me to believe her, without saying a single word about her past, not even offering a sliver of an explanation. But I had to admit, Bai Shaoxiu really understood me. She probably knew that I was the one person in this world who would absolutely believe her unconditionally. The next day, Bai Shaoxiu held his funeral. The cemetery plot had already been bought by Bai Shaoxiu in advance, and it was from the tombstone that I learned his name. Shu Yan. This middle-aged man seemed to have no relatives or friends. The funeral was exceptionally simple. Only Bai Shaoxiu wore mourning clothes for him, and sent him off on his final journey, and me, of course. Throughout the entire funeral, Bai Shaoxiu and I didn't say a single word. We calmly and silently sent this middle-aged man away. After the funeral ended, Bai Shaoxiu and I left. Walking on the road, it was still just silence. And this silence made me extremely afraid. Without any more reservations, without any more ties, was she about to leave me? I didn't dare to ask, terrified that the answer would be something I wouldn't want to hear. But in the end, it was Bai Shaoxiu who broke the silence. On the street, filled with pedestrians, she suddenly grabbed my hand. I froze for a moment, and hurriedly stopped in my tracks. But I kept my head down, not daring to look up at her. "Do you still have any money?" That was the first sentence she asked me. I froze, then hurriedly gritted my teeth and said, "I do," but, thinking of my current, desperate situation, I still had to ask, "Can I get a discount now?" Bai Shaoxiu suddenly smiled. It was that very light smile, completely silent, her eyes slightly crinkling, with warmth pooling in her gaze. She said, "Okay, $1 a day. Can you afford that?" I was stunned for a long time, then hurriedly nodded and said, "Yes." "Then can I sign up for a lifetime VIP?" When I brought up the word lifetime, Bai Shaoxiu paused for a second, and an emotion I couldn't understand flashed in her eyes. She kept smiling, then gently took my hand. "Okay." A sudden breeze kicked up on the street, bringing a bit of chill. She held my hand, gently rubbing it. "Let's go home." Saying this, she took my hand and tucked it into the pocket of my coat, together with hers. I blankly followed her footsteps. Actually, I never thought that one day I would hear her say those 3 words to me. "Let's go home." Inside my pocket, I gently squeezed her hand back. "Okay, let's go home together." That night, both Bai Shaoxiu and I drank. The room was full of the smell of alcohol, and empty bottles piled up on the floor. She rubbed her temples and said softly, "My head hurts a bit. Let's go sleep. I'll clean up the room tomorrow morning. Okay?" Of course I wouldn't refuse her anything. We lay side by side on the bed. I was wearing a button-down shirt and long pants, while she wore a cotton slip nightgown. After lying there for a while, I felt like this position was too distant. So, I pulled her into my arms. I was hoping to take the opportunity to get even more intimate, but instead she told me her secret, about her past, and about that middle-aged man named Shu Yan. This was the first time I had ever seen Bai Shaoxiu smoke. She sat halfway up, took a pack of cigarettes and a lighter from the nightstand, pulled one out, and lit. "Jiang Suyin. Actually, those rumors are all bullshit." I looked up in shock, and it was as if I was looking at another, completely different Bai Shaoxiu, having known her for years. She was always the proud type, aloof and a woman of few words. It was the first time I saw her smoking and swearing, but this version of Bai Shaoxiu inexplicably felt more real to me. We had been sharing a bed for so many days, but only today did I feel that the person beside me was made of flesh and blood, that she was real. She took a drag from the cigarette, turned to look at me, and the smoke swirled between us, blurring her features. "Shu Yan was never some older sugar daddy. He was my second father." Her voice trembled with emotion as she said this, and then she told me a long, profound story. Back in middle school, because of an accident, Bai Shaoxiu's parents both died, and she became an orphan. The inheritance her parents left was snatched up by relatives, and she was left out on the streets, homeless. During that time, it was actually Shu Yan who picked her off the streets and took her in. Actually, she and Shu Yan were strangers, but Shu Yan was an old acquaintance of her mother's. The work he did wasn't very clean. He had been lonely his whole life, with no wife or children, no family, and no friends. After taking Bai Shaoxiu home, he even changed jobs, stopping that dirty work to earn clean money instead. Because he said, since he picked up a daughter, he couldn't do things that would make her too ashamed to hold her head high. Over many years of saving, Shu Yan did have some money, but he didn't dare spend it, because he needed to save it to put Bai Shaoxiu through school. By this point in the story, a cigarette had just burned out. Bai Shaoxiu turned to look at me, her eyes extremely red. "Are you wondering too, why he brought me home and sacrificed so much for me?" I nodded honestly, especially with those rumors out there. I couldn't help but overthink things. Bai Xiaoxiu pursed her lips and smiled. Actually, he's a pretty foolish man. He loved one woman for many years. Loved her honestly and devotedly, without disturbing her, without demanding anything. Just silently loving her. I suddenly understood, and Bai Xiaoxiu gave a soft laugh. He told me once, when he was young, to try to give my mom a better future. He risked his life to start a business, and suffered a lot. But when he took the money he earned to my mom, he found out she was already married. My dad and my mom had a flash marriage. My dad fancied my mom's face, and my mom fancied my dad's family's money and power. I was stunned by the story. Was he ever with your mom? Bai Xiaoxiu stubbed out her cigarette, shook her head. From start to finish, it was completely one-sided. That's why I said he's foolish. Bai Xiaoxiu hesitated for a moment, then lit a second cigarette. Through the curling smoke, she narrowed her eyes as if recalling the past. When he picked me up and took me home, he told me that the reason he decided to bring me home wasn't entirely because of my mom. He said he actually had a girlfriend once, and she got pregnant with a child. But because he was poor, she aborted it. It was a girl. Bai Xiaoxiu furrowed her brow slightly. He said when he saw me on the street he thought, if his child had been born safely back then, she probably wouldn't be much younger than me. If it were his own child wandering the streets, he would be absolutely heartbroken. But Bai Xiaoxiu looked up at me, her red eyes making my heart ache. Jiang Suyan, do you think he was waiting for me to call him Dad? When I hugged him at the very end, I softly called him Dad, but I don't know if he heard me. Bai Xiaoxiu pressed her lips together. This man was a fool his whole life. He never got a gentle word from my mom, and he didn't even get to hear me call him Dad. She stubbed out the half-smoked cigarette, turned her head away. What a fool. To be honest, I was a little speechless, not knowing what to say. It was a short story, but what Bai Xiaoxiu had just described was the entire experience of her youth. My heart ached for her, and I also felt guilty for my earlier ugly suspicions. I didn't know how to comfort her, so I could only turn and hug her, whispering, he heard you. He definitely heard you. Bai Xiaoxiu nodded, but didn't speak. That night, we talked a lot. Talked about the past, talked about our innermost thoughts. But when it came to the future, Bai Xiaoxiu didn't mention a single word. Maybe it was the alcohol, or maybe it was the fact that after slicing open one's whole inner wounds for someone to see, there's always a sense of liberating relief that follows. I don't know who initiated it, but we slowly leaned in and kissed. Tonight, we seemed different from before. Her hands pressed gently against my chest, her fingertips tightening and releasing. Tonight's Bai Xiaoxiu seemed a little different from usual too. I closed my eyes and deepened the kiss. I thought she would understand what I meant, but even when we were half undressed, she still refused me. She took a deep breath, withdrew her hands, and said in a low voice, Jiang Suyan. No. Why? I opened my eyes and looked at her. This time I was truly a little disappointed. The first night I brought you home, didn't we already sleep together? Neither of us were forcing it just now. Everything was happening so naturally. Why not? But Bai Xiaoxiu didn't speak. As she remained silent, I asked, Bai Xiaoxiu, what exactly are you running from? I don't believe you didn't feel anything for me just now. She clearly did. We were so close just a moment ago, and I distinctly saw a hint of love in her eyes. She wrapped her arms around my waist, nestled into my embrace, and sighed softly. I'm sorry, Jiang Suya. I can't right now. Still just I can't. This person knew I was completely under her spell, which was why she could refuse me so fearlessly. I was silent for a long time, and finally, mirroring her, let out a sigh. Then let's drop it. It's not like I'm some wild beast. It's not like I absolutely have to devour you. That night, we slept in each other's arms. It was strange. I was so close to her. I could hear her heartbeat right by my ear. Yet I inexplicably felt that she seemed to be slipping further and further away from me. As Bai Xiaoxiu was about to fall asleep, I groggily asked her, are you hiding something from me? I always felt like she was hiding something, and not just the thing with Xu Yan. Bai Xiaoxiu didn't answer me for a long time. Right at the moment, I almost fell asleep. Her very soft voice sounded by my ear, so quiet it almost seemed like a hallucination. Jiang Suyan, if I said I was, would you promise not to blame me? I wanted to say, no, so don't hide anything from me, but as soon as my eyes closed, I couldn't open them again. I fell asleep without saying a single word. When I woke up the next day, Bai Shaoxiu was nestled in my arms. It was already past 9 o'clock. Rarely, Bai Shaoxiu had slept any. We forgot to close the curtains last night, and now sunlight was spilling through the corner of the window, landing on Bai Shaoxiu's brow and the corner of her eye. I stared at her, a bit dazed. Having known her for years, I would still, on this completely ordinary morning, marvel at her beauty. Before I met Bai Shaoxiu, I never thought there could be such a beautiful girl in the world. She was clear and proud. No matter the rumors outside, she always wore a white dress, her back forever straight. Standing in a crowd, she always carried an otherworldly, ethereal aura. I always felt she was exactly like Xiao Longnu from Mr. Jin Yong's books. That's stunningly beautiful. Coming back to my senses, I found that Bai Shaoxiu was already awake. She was looking at me, a gentle smile in her eyes. The moment our eyes met, Bai Shaoxiu leaned in and placed a soft kiss on my lips. Maybe it was because I had just woken up, but my brain short-circuited, and I inexplicably asked, Bai Shaoxiu, is this part of your work duties? Bai Shaoxiu was also stunned. After a moment of silence, she chuckled, sat up and said, you can think of it that way. Again with these ambiguous answers. But after spending these past few days together, I had gotten used to Bai Shaoxiu's attitude, and slowly stopped agonizing over these things. I've always been an open-minded person. Why overthink it? Anyway, she was by my side right now. Compared to those 5 years of unrequited love, at least now I could kiss her and hold her, which was already an existence I wouldn't have dared to dream of in the past. While we were washing up together in the bathroom, I suddenly noticed in the mirror that Bai Shaoxiu's face was alarmingly pale. Bai Shaoxiu, holding my toothbrush. I leaned in closer to study her. Why doesn't your color look so good? Bai Shaoxiu froze for a second. It's probably just the lighting. I nodded and continued brushing my teeth. But I had noticed that Bai Shaoxiu seemed to have lost weight recently. Bai Shaoxiu, biting on my toothbrush. I used my hands to gesture the thickness of her arm. You've lost weight again recently. You need to eat properly. Saying this, I spit out the toothpaste in my mouth and sneakily pinched her cheek. You're too skinny. It doesn't look healthy. You'll look prettier if you gain a little weight. Bai Shaoxiu smiled. Okay. Breakfast was, as always, toast and fried eggs made by Bai Shaoxiu, along with 2 glasses of warm milk. Afraid I would find it too plain. Bai Shaoxiu also pan-fried 2 black pepper sausages. But after we finished eating, when Bai Shaoxiu preemptively went to wash the dishes as usual, she suddenly covered her mouth and ran into the bathroom. She didn't have time to close the door, so I quickly followed her in. Hearing her vomiting sounds broke my heart. I hurriedly ran over to pat her back, but before I could even stand steady, I was pushed away by Bai Shaoxiu reaching her hand back. She caught her breath for a moment and said in a low voice, wait for me outside. It's fine. It's not like I'm grossed out by you. But before I could finish, she interrupted me. Get out. I had no choice but to exit the bathroom. I poured her a glass of warm water and waited for her at the door. After a while, the sound of the toilet flushing came from the bathroom. Then, she must have turned on the faucet to rinse out her mouth again. When she came out, Bai Shaoxiu had washed her face, water droplets still clinging to her skin. Her face was still a bit pale. I handed her the water, worrying out loud, are you feeling sick lately? Let's skip going to the shop today and go to the hospital for a checkup. No need. Bai Shaoxiu took the water and took a sip, smiling at me. Don't worry. I am completely fine. It's just a bit of a stomach bug lately. I'll be fine after buying some medicine at the pharmacy later. Really? Why would I lie to you? She drank her water with an indifferent expression, and then went back into the kitchen to finish washing the dishes. Seeing that she really didn't seem unwell, I let my guard down. I was a glutton, always eating random things. So nausea and stomach aches were a common occurrence for me too. I didn't think much of it. After Bai Shaoxiu finished washing the dishes, we went to the coffee shop together. Thanks to Bai Shaoxiu's service, My already popular shop became even more famous. Customers coming in for coffee would secretly film videos and record Bai Xiaoxiu. In this society that judges by appearances, Bai Xiaoxiu rapidly shot to fame with her extreme beauty. Countless boys came just for her. I felt a bit possessive, but also secretly proud, and I couldn't suppress that petty boyish pride. See, the girl I like is just that incredible, making so many guys swoon over her. Of course, that included me. I thought, among all the boys who like Bai Xiaoxiu, I will always be, well, the most sincere one. They all just loved her pretty face. But I was different. I'd known her for nearly 8 years. Chased her for 5 years. I loved Bai Xiaoxiu the person, from the inside out to her very soul. During this time, Bai Xiaoxiu grew gentler and gentler towards me. A gentle Bai Xiaoxiu was truly fatal to me. I couldn't stop myself from falling deeper and deeper. I couldn't help but ask her, Bai Xiaoxiu, have you ever had feelings for me? Bai Xiaoxiu, let's stop talking about transactions. Let's be together for real, okay? Bai Xiaoxiu, you do like me a little bit, too, right? But she never gave a straight answer. Every time, she would just chuckle softly, then cup my face with her hands and ruffle my hair. But ultimately say nothing. She understood me too well. I could never bear to force her. So even though she was overtly dodging these questions, I still couldn't bear to interrogate her relentlessly. Every time, I just had to let it go. But Bai Xiaoxiu definitely made me feel that she had liked me too. Like in this autumn filled with falling leaves. On windy streets, she would duck inside my jacket and hold my hand as we strolled down the street. For instance, if I casually mentioned wanting to eat at a newly opened place, Bai Xiaoxiu would make up an excuse. Go out, wait in line for an hour, and bring back every new item on their menu for me. Or another time, I accidentally discovered that Bai Xiaoxiu's phone wallpaper was a photo of us. It was a photo of us kissing. Once, on a whim, using a delayed timer, I had captured the moment Bai Xiaoxiu and I kissed. That photo was also my absolute favorite. It was right around sunset, and the afterglow spilled around us, coating us both in a layer of pale gold light. It was unimaginably beautiful. And another thing, every time Bai Xiaoxiu and I kissed, she was exceptionally earnest and reverent. But, just as I thought, that Bai Xiaoxiu had gradually fallen in love with me. Fate played a joke on me. One morning, between late autumn and early winter, when I woke up, I found Bai Xiaoxiu collapsed on the floor. My heart violently clenched in that instant. Panic and terror mingled together, and I almost couldn't breathe. My mind was completely blank. I didn't even know how I managed to dial the emergency number. I only knew that after I rushed her to the hospital in a daze, and after a series of examinations, receiving the nightmare news that she was in the late stages of stomach cancer, caused my world to come crashing down. I couldn't believe it. That aloof, proud girl, like a white swan. That girl who embodied everything beautiful in the world. Why was she being handed a death sentence by the doctors? But Bai Xiaoxiu had known about her illness all along. So when she woke up in the hospital room, she only paused for a few seconds before looking at me and smiling. Her smile was still so gentle. I scared you, didn't I? This single sentence. Every word of it brought tears to my eyes. So, she actually knew about her illness all along. So, all that paleness, bleeding while brushing her teeth, and vomiting weren't just minor ailments. So, that's why she never talked about the future with me, and never gave me an answer. So, that's why back at the KTV, when I offered to pay to keep her, the way she looked at me was gentle yet distant. She had known everything from beginning to end. I don't know if she ever loved me. If she had, I couldn't imagine how she must have felt over the past few days. I looked at her quietly. On the hospital bed, her face was pale, her skin so white, it was almost translucent. After meeting my gaze for a moment, Bai Xiaoxiu suddenly smiled. Actually, I wanted to keep it a secret from you forever. And when the day came that I couldn't bear it anymore, I would just quietly leave. Who knew my body would be so useless that I would just pass out? Before she spoke, it was bearable, but as soon as she opened her mouth, my heart ached even more. So why didn't you tell me earlier? Why didn't you get treatment? I gripped her hand, and, with every word I asked, my voice trembled a little more. Bai Shaoxiu looked at me as she always did, her voice very soft. It's no use. Jiang Suyan, treating it would just be a waste of money. Besides, she chuckled, I don't have any money. She never planned to get treated. Yes, from beginning to end, she never had any intention of treating her illness. She lay there looking at me, her eyes also gradually turning red. For all this time, the one thing I regret the most is agreeing to go home with you that day. At the KTV, I froze. Why? She gently squeezed my hand. Her palm was very cold. Because I spent your money. And yet, I wasn't able to stay with you for long. I understand how you feel about me, but I really have no way of returning your feeling. She sighed, her tone low. I'm actually pretty terrible, aren't I? I spent your money, but I haven't been able to leave you with anything. Jiang Suyan, if I could do it all over again, I would absolutely not have nodded yes. That day at the KTV, she seemed to be losing her battle to hold back, tears pooling in her eyes. But she turned her head away, refusing to cry in front of me. It's hard to describe how completely heart-wrenching that moment was. I had never seen Bai Shaoxiu cry, not even at Xu Yan's funeral. But, at this moment, from my angle, I could see that, as she turned away, large drops of tears fell. Every single drop smashed fiercely against my heart, loud and resounding. I stared blankly at her profile, suddenly feeling like she was about to stop belonging to this mortal world. Just the thought of it made my heart ache unbearably. On her third day in the hospital, Bai Shaoxiu asked to be discharged and go home with me. Actually, Bai Shaoxiu didn't know that I was already preparing to sell my shop and home to pay for her treatment. Unable to dissuade her, I quietly went to find her attending physician. Doctor, please, tell me the truth. With Bai Shaoxiu's current condition, what are the chances of her being cured? I had made up my mind that even if there was only a 1% chance of hope, I absolutely had to save her. But alone, in his office with me, the doctor looked at me for a moment, finally shook his head, and sighed. I've heard some things about Bai Shaoxiu's situation. She's a pitiful child. I'll tell you the truth, it's already too late. The cancer cells have already spread throughout her body. No treatment will be of any use now. Continuing treatment will only be torturing her. You might as well take her back and let her spend these last days happily. I was stunned for a long time. What the doctor meant was, there was no room left to treat Bai Shaoxiu anymore. Finally, with red eyes, I left his office, then returned to the hospital room to pack Bai Shaoxiu's things and take her home. On the hospital bed, Bai Shaoxiu looked at me quietly, then took my hand. Let's go home. Holding back my heartbreak, I said, okay, let's go home. We took a taxi home. After getting out, I carried her luggage in one hand and held Bai Shaoxiu's hand with my right. Actually, over the past few days, I had wanted to ask her more than once if she had ever felt anything for me during all this time, but ultimately, I gave up the thought. Forget it. Loved me, didn't love me, felt something, didn't feel anything. What did it matter anymore? Anyway, it was all going to end with her leaving. If she had loved me, I'm afraid it would only break my heart even more. Back home, Bai Shaoxiu put down the bags and turned to look at me. The moment our eyes met, I was still overcome with intense sadness, and I couldn't stop my eyes from reddening. Bai Shaoxiu looked at me for 2 seconds, then finally let out a soft sigh and leaned in to kiss me. It was a kiss of ultimate gentleness. My mind went blank. I could only gently pull her into my arms, gradually deepening the kiss. But in the end, nothing happened between us. Bai Shaoxiu said, let's drink one more time. I instinctively refused. No, the doctor said you. She looked at me quietly. It's fine. In these final days, I want to follow my heart a bit more. I've held back my whole life, so I just want to let go a little at the end. That phrase, my whole life, really struck a chord in me for some reason. She was clearly only in her 20s. How could it already be her entire life? Of course I couldn't refuse Bai Shaoxiu when she was like this. In the end, I agreed. But I set a rule with her. She could only drink 2 cans of beer. She chuckled and agreed. So we put on thick coats and went out together, heading to the supermarket to buy groceries and alcohol. It felt like it was the first time Bai Shaoxiu and I had gone grocery shopping together. Like the most ordinary couple, we strolled hand in hand, pushed the shopping cart together, and lingered in front of the shelves to pick things out together. This vegetable isn't fresh. That meat is too expensive. Together, we picked out a shopping cart full of items. There was meat, vegetables, and snacks, and also some home goods that looked cozy and cute. For example, a particularly adorable bird-shaped toothpick holder. You press a button, and the little bird lowers its head to pick up a toothpick. And another example, light blue dried flowers in a pretty glass bottle, looking warm and beautiful, so much like Bai Xiaoxiu. At checkout, Bai Xiaoxiu beat me to paying. Seeing me pick up the shopping bags, she looked back at me and smiled. I've spent so much of your money, and I've never bought anything for you. I can still afford these few hundred yuan. I forced a smile and followed closely behind her. But I realized that a lot of the time, Bai Xiaoxiu was just pushing through the pain, from getting out of the taxi to entering my house. A short 5-minute walk. Bai Xiaoxiu had to rest 4 times. Before the illness struck her like a landslide, Bai Xiaoxiu could still pretend everything was fine and keep me company while working at the coffee shop. But now, her stamina seemed to have plummeted instantly. A 5-minute walk took us half an hour. In the kitchen, we washed vegetables and cooked together. I can cook, but my culinary skills are average. The food I make can only be described as edible, but Bai Xiaoxiu's cooking was top-notch. So, she was the head chef, and I was her assistant. We chatted and laughed. The kitchen filled with laughter and the warmth of everyday life. While Bai Xiaoxiu was stir-frying, I washed the other vegetables while staring blankly at her back. This life of spending every day and night with Bai Xiaoxiu, could I please have it for a little longer? I don't ask for 10 years or 100 years. Even just one more year, even just one more day would be fine. I found I really didn't dare to think about Bai Xiaoxiu's illness. Just thinking about it made my heart ache uncontrollably. She was cooking, and I was already standing behind her, silently shedding tears. After finishing a dish, Bai Xiaoxiu turned off the stove. Before she turned around, I quickly turned away and turned up the faucet to cover up the sound of my sobbing. This meal was actually the hardest meal I have ever eaten in my entire life. I really couldn't bring myself to smile. Looking at the girl in the white dress sitting in front of me, my mind was consumed by a single thought. How could someone so wonderful be handed a death sentence? How could she? But I didn't dare to show my sadness, afraid it would make Bai Xiaoxiu feel even worse. Actually, just like the doctor said, every day of Bai Xiaoxiu's life from now on was a countdown. I had to let her spend them happily, but my tightly strung emotions instantly collapsed because of one sentence from her. While we were eating, she peeled a lot of shrimp for me, then pushed the bowl full of shrimp meat in front of me. Her voice gentle. When I'm gone, you have to remember to eat your meals on time. I truly couldn't hold it in anymore. Large teardrops began to fall, but I didn't dare look up. I just kept shoveling rice into my mouth with my chopsticks, stuffing huge mouthfuls of it in. Rice, mixed with tears, tasted bitter. That was the most unforgettable day of my life. I went to the supermarket with Bai Xiaoxiu. We bought groceries together, went home, and cooked together, ate together, and drank together. I drank so much. I remember that after getting drunk, I held Bai Xiaoxiu and kissed her so many times. I asked her, Bai Xiaoxiu, have there been other boys as deeply devoted to you as I am? Bai Xiaoxiu smiled and kissed me. Only you. I remember the sunset that day was beautiful, and the starlight at night was beautiful too. Because I drank too much, I couldn't really remember what happened later. I only vaguely remember that as I was fading into sleep, Bai Xiaoxiu's voice seemed to sound by my ear. Jiang Suan, I'm so sorry. I've never been able to give you anything in return. I'm sorry. But actually, I feel the same way about you as you do about me. I'm sorry. But it's time for us to say goodbye. She seemed to say something else, but I couldn't remember. Heavy with alcohol. I completely passed out. But when I woke up, it was too late. Bai Xiaoxiu was gone. By the time I woke up, it was already the next morning. I walked barefoot all over the house, but I couldn't find Bai Xiaoxiu anywhere. The only thing there was a letter she had left on the dining table. The moment I saw the letter, my heart sank, and I suddenly had an ominous premonition. Sure enough, with trembling hands I opened the letter, glanced at it, and saw the signature at the bottom right. Bai Shaxu's last words. My hand shook, and the letter fell onto the table. Glaringly white. I had considered that Bai Shaxu would be tortured by her illness, and I was forced to accept that, on some future day, she would be taken away by it, but I never imagined she would be this quick, so proactive in leaving this world. Before I could even read the actual contents of the letter, I received a phone call. The call was from the police. They said Bai Shaxi's body had been found in a corner of a nearby park. She had taken a massive dose of sleeping pills, and in Bai Shaxu's phone. Mine was the only phone number. Hanging up the phone, I carefully folded the letter and walked out the door barefoot, even forgetting to put on my shoes. But after closing the door, standing barefoot in the empty hallway, I suddenly couldn't control myself and burst into uncontrollable wails. What devastated me the most, actually, wasn't the news of Bai Shaxu's death. I think I understood her. Rather than being slowly tortured to death by illness, it was better to choose a beautiful sunny day and quietly, proactively bid farewell to this world. But what completely broke me was that even for her suicide, she chose a completely deserted corner. She had no home. The place she and Suyan once lived in had been sold to pay for his medical treatment. So, in her final moments in this world, she truly had nowhere to go. I cried, wondering how I managed to fall in love with such a fool. She was so wonderful it was almost absurd. Right up until the very last moment of her life, she still held on to her kindness and dignity. She didn't choose to commit suicide in a hotel or an inn, and she didn't leave while in my house either. She had nowhere to go. So she chose to go in the early hours of the morning to an empty park, find an forgotten corner, take sleeping pills, and quietly pass away. I couldn't accept it. I really couldn't accept it. I squatted in the hallway and cried for a long time. Even the neighbors across the hall opened their door to look at me. I must have disturbed them. I felt very sorry, but I really couldn't control my emotions. I know exactly how long I cried, until I seemed to hear Bai Shaxu's voice. She said, "Jiang Suyan, you don't look good at all when you cry." I violently jerked my head up, desperately wishing that everything was just a cruel joke. But the hallway was completely empty, with not a trace of Bai Shaxu's voice. Yet I vividly felt that Bai Shaxu was there. She seemed to be looking at me from some corner. Her gaze, gentle. I took a deep breath, leaned against the wall, and stood up. I knew I had to go take care of Bai Shaxu's final arrangements. In this world, she only had me. I went to the police station, and there, I saw Bai Shaxu. She lay there, wearing her white dress. Her face was so peaceful, without the slightest trace of being tortured by illness. Even the corners of her lips were turned up in a slight smile. But she was truly cruel. How could she bear to leave me all alone at home, letting me drown in the beautiful dream of having her last night, only to go off by herself and silently depart from this world? I didn't even get to properly say goodbye to her, the girl I had loved for so many years. Our final farewell was just her one-sided departure. She was the most gentle and beautiful presence in this world, and also the cruelest. That night, I locked myself in my room and tremblingly opened that letter once again. The letter was very long, a full 3 pages, written in Bai Shaxu's familiar handwriting. But every word and every sentence broke my heart to read. "Jiang Suyan, I'm so sorry to say goodbye to you this way. I have so much I want to say, but I don't even know where to begin. I'm sorry. Actually, deep down, I'm a very fragile person. I couldn't shoulder the weight of your beautiful affection. Because I was fragile. Because I felt inferior. Because I was afraid of dragging you down. Because of everything. Back in school, I didn't dare to respond to your feelings. But actually, to me, you were always special. Out of all the people I've ever met, you were the most special one. Yang Suyan, your love was never one-sided. I liked you more than anyone else did. But I didn't dare to say it. You had excellent grades. You were the golden child in everyone's eyes. But I was just an orphan. I was ostracized at school. And whenever anyone mentioned me, it was always those widely spread rumors. Even the money for my schooling was earned through hard labor by a man who had absolutely no blood relation to me. There were countless times I wanted to walk up to you and tell you that I actually liked you too. But every time I met your eyes, the words would die in my throat. You probably don't know, but you have incredibly clear eyes. I figured you must have been protected very well by your family since childhood, to have such a pure gaze. I used to think that once I got into college, everything would be okay. But the rumors kept spreading, and then Shu Yan was diagnosed with a terminal illness. So in my sophomore year, I dropped out of school and started taking odd jobs everywhere to earn money for his medical bills. He had raised me for so many years. It was finally my turn to repay his kindness. So I cut off all contact with you, not wanting to drag you down, but I never stopped paying attention to you. I registered a secondary account and followed your Weibo, secretly watching your life unfold. I knew when you won first place in a competition. I knew when you started your internship. I knew when you graduated. And later, when you opened the coffee shop. I was so proud and happy for you. The boy I loved was living such a smooth and successful life, but during that same time, I was diagnosed with stomach cancer because I had dragged it out for too long. By the time it was discovered, it was already in the mid to late stages. The doctors said the cancer cells were spreading very fast. I started to believe in fate. I realized that no matter how hard I tried to live, fate had never been kind to me. It never gave me a shred of hope. But I thought, if I could just cure Shu Yan, at least that would be one wish fulfilled. I wanted to go back to working multiple jobs like before, working myself to the bone to earn money. But my body wouldn't allow it anymore. My physical condition was really not good. To save him, I chose to work at the Key TV, just as you saw. But Jiang Suyin, I truly believe in fate now. Because, on my very first day of work, I ran into you, in such an embarrassing situation. Other than the word fate, I have no way to explain such a coincidence. That day was also the day I regret the most. Before entering the private room that day, I had drank some alcohol, and was feeling a bit impulsive. I clearly knew I didn't have long to live. Yeah, I still couldn't resist getting close to you and kissing you. I even ended up agreeing to go home with you. Spending your money is the thing I feel most deeply ashamed of. But, Jiang Suyin, the day I saw you, my resolve truly wavered. I thought, maybe God is taking pity on me, allowing me to be a little closer to my dream. In the final days of my life, everything that happened in the days that followed, to me, truly felt like stolen time. Every minute, every second, every intimate touch and kiss, I took incredibly seriously. Actually, you didn't know. Every single day I spent with you, I lived it as if it were my last. But Shu Yan's death really dealt a massive blow to me. In my life, I've experienced several painful partings and deaths. I understand that kind of agony. I started to wonder, if one day I left, what would you do? Would you be sad? Would you hide away and cry secretly? Would you forget to eat on time? Would you never meet anyone who treats you gently again? I couldn't stop worrying. But I knew that leaving was only a matter of time, especially later on, as my body became less and less able to hold up a lot of the time I was just forcing myself to endure. Do you remember that time I threw up in the bathroom? I chased you out. I was very fierce with you that time. I'm sorry. But I was afraid you'd see the blood I was vomiting into the toilet. I was scared, Jiang Suyin. Forgive my selfishness. I didn't want you to see that. Bai Shakshu, tortured by illness until she barely looked human. I hoped that in your memory, Bai Shakshu would always be the girl she was. In the beginning, the girl who loved wearing white dresses, who had long black hair, and who smiled at you so gently. Forgive my fragility. I could only leave quietly while you were asleep. I couldn't bring myself to say goodbye to you face to face. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to let go. By the time you read this letter, I'll surely be gone. Don't cry just yet. Believe me, I left very happy. Really, because I left on the happiest day of my life. I went to the supermarket with the boy I've secretly loved for years. We cooked together, ate and drank together, and we even kissed. I'm so very happy now. Really, I went so far away to end everything, simply because I didn't want to cause trouble for you or anyone else. Jiang Suyin, you know, I have no family and no friends. In this world, you are the only person I worry about leaving behind. So please, don't let me leave with a heavy heart, okay? I won't say those hypocritical things like forget me, but I do hope that when you think of me, it will only be our happy memories together. I hope that my time spent in this world doesn't leave you with painful memories. I also hope that my departure doesn't take away your ability to love. You're still young. You will definitely meet an even more wonderful person in the future. If you meet them, please don't push them away because of me. If that day comes, I hope you'll keep me safely tucked away in your memories and love someone else well. Don't forget me too easily. But I'm even more afraid of you holding yourself back because you remember me. Bai Xiaoxiu's last words. The letter was very long. I read it completely, word by word. The strange thing was, reading these heartfelt words from Bai Xiaoxiu before she died, I didn't shed a single tear. I read it with a smile, just like how Bai Xiaoxiu left. Bai Xiaoxiu probably didn't know that her departure wouldn't take away my ability to love. On the contrary, because of her, I would learn how to love everyone in this world. Having loved someone so gentle and wonderful, the rest of my long life would be healed by her. Smiling, I put the letter away and glanced out the window. Outside, a bright moon hung high in the sky, just like Bai Xiaoxiu's eyes. Bai Xiaoxiu, I will remember you, and I will love others well in the future. But even though I was clearly smiling, I still couldn't hold back the tears that fell. I must have accidentally left the window open and got some sand in my eyes. 3 years after Bai Xiaoxiu passed away, I met a girl. She was a lot like the old Bai Xiaoxiu. She loved wearing white dresses, had long black hair, clear eyes, and a gentle personality. She was practically a carbon copy of Bai Xiaoxiu. I fell head over heels for her. But she and Bai Xiaoxiu were completely different. Bai Xiaoxiu was genuinely gentle, while hers was just a facade. I knew from the very beginning that her gentleness was just an act. In reality, she was just a terrible girl. But I still didn't reject her advances. I held her hand and hugged her, but refused to kiss her. I spent money on her, but ignored all her messy affairs outside. On the 2nd month and 6th day, we were together. It was Bai Xiaoxiu's birthday. That day, I changed into Bai Xiaoxiu's favorite white button-down shirt, carefully dressed up, and asked that girl out. I could tell that the moment she saw me, a flash of amazement crossed her eyes. That day, I took her to the supermarket. We bought groceries together, then drove home and cooked together, and then ate and drank. She didn't know what was going on, but she played along with me anyway. That night, I drank a bottle of beer, and after dinner, I took the initiative to hug her. Goodbye, Bai Xiaoxiu. I held her in my arms and whispered. She froze for a moment. Bai Xiaoxiu. My name isn't Bai Xiaoxiu. I ignored her. Instead, I let go, took a small step back, and looked at her with tears in my eyes and a smile on my face. This time, it really is goodbye. The girl looked at me, completely baffled, cursed me out as a lunatic, and left in a huff. A little while later, she sent me a breakup text and conveniently announced her new boyfriend on her WeChat moments. I closed and stared blankly at my phone's wallpaper. It had been 3 years, and my wallpaper was still that same photo of us from back then. Under the sunset, Bai Xiaoxiu and I were kissing. A picture of tranquil peace. I looked at it for a long time, and then I changed the wallpaper. The new wallpaper was a cartoon picture, with a few cute little cats rolling around on the grass. Full of life. It took me 3 years to move on. I won't forget the girl who once appeared in my life and amazed my entire youth. But I'm learning to let go. I have to let go eventually, right? Just like Bai Xiaoxiu hoped I would. That night, I had a dream. After Bai Xiaoxiu passed away, it was the first time I dreamed of her. In the dream, Bai Xiaoxiu was smiling. She hadn't changed at all from my memory. White dress, long black hair, a gentle gaze. She walked over with a smile, stood on her tiptoes, and pinched my cheek. Her smile was so gentle. Jiang Suyan, this time I can finally leave in peace. In the dream, I smiled too. I looked at her quietly. Okay? She pulled her hand back and waved at me. Jiang Suyan, you're especially handsome when you smile, really? I smiled as I watched her walk further and further away. Otro parode, your video is really good. Next time I see you, I'll definitely give you coins. No. Biao, good thing you didn't give coins. If you had given coins, I would have held you back for a lifetime. Then I'm going to exit now. Will we meet again, Biao? When we meet again, you have to be happy, okay? Biao, you need to like. You need to give coins. Okay? Like it? Give coins and scroll to the next video, okay? You're iceberg. If you can't scroll to me anymore, that's okay. You have to give coins to others. Ah, Biao. Biao. Biao, why? How am I supposed to live without you? Biao. You, this iceberg. Take me with you. Ah.